There we go. Can somebody just give me a thumbs up that you can hear me? Great. Good morning. We're on the record in case number 2021-00029, electronic application of Martin County Solar Project, LLC, for a certificate of construction for an approximately 200 megawatt merchant electric solar generating facility in Martin County, Kentucky, pursuant to KRS 278.700 and 807 KAR 5110. My name is Kent Chandler. I am chairman of the Kentucky Public Service Commission and also serve as chairman for the Kentucky State Board on Electric Generation and Transmission Siting. I will be presiding over the hearing today. Joining me today via video conferencing are the other siting board members. They are Amy Cubbage, Vice Chairman of the Public Service Commission. I believe Commissioner Mary Ann Butler of the Public Service Commission will be joining us. John Lyons, Deputy Secretary of the Energy and Environment Cabinet, serving as a proxy for Secretary Rebecca Goodman. Charlie Rowland, Executive Advisor with the Cabinet for Economic Development, serving as proxy for Interim Secretary Larry Hayes. And I don't know if they'll be here with us today, but the other two members of this siting board are Martin County Judge Executive Victor Sloan and Ryan Wilson, the governor's ad hoc appointee. At this time, I would normally caution attendees to set your cellular phones to silent mode or turn them off. Due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, we're hosting this hearing via video conference. In addition to the normal courtesies regarding cell phones, we ask that you do the following to help ensure clarity and avoid feedback issues with the video conference hearing. Please mute your microphone if you're not speaking. Attorneys, if interjecting, please state your name so that the video record is clear. If you use a phone for the audio and a computer for video, turn off the computer audio, otherwise you will have feedback. We ask that you use wired headphones or wired earbuds instead of wireless because of the possible length of the hearing. The batteries may die. Please keep a charger for your computer in case your battery runs low. And finally, please alert the siting board if you are experiencing technology failure that prevents your participation at any time in the proceedings. The attorneys should contact staff at the previously provided contact information should this occur. The hearing today is for the purpose of taking evidence on Martin County Solar Project LLC's application requesting a certificate of construction for a 200 megawatt merchant electric generating facility. At this time, we'll have the entry of appearance of counsel. I would ask that when providing your entry of appearance, that you also identify your witnesses at this time. For the applicant.
Good morning, Your Honor. This is Gregory Dutton with the firm Frost Brown Todd on behalf of the applicant, Martin County Solar. I have with me today currently 3 witnesses, though we are expecting 4. The witnesses today will be Eric Mayarka, Dr. David Loomis, Amber Coleman, and Jason Crumpler.
Okay. And for the siting board staff?
Jennifer Bell.
I've been advised that public notice has been given and filed into the record. Is that correct, Mr. Dutton?
That's correct.
And Ms. Fell, are there any outstanding motions other than the motion and maybe the supplemental motions for the deviation from setback requirements?
No, Your Honor, that's all.
Okay. We publicized on our website an opportunity for people to provide public comment. In order to do so, we just ask that they provide us their contact information and that we will give them the information to attend. Ms. Fell, has anybody contacted the Public Service Commission indicating their interest in providing public comments today?
No.
As always, public comments may be made at any time in writing to the siting board through the Public Service Commission. The instructions and email address to send your public comments in are at the Public Service Commission's website at psc.ky.gov. Written comments may always be submitted into the system that's on our PSC website or through the email address on the PSC website. And we just ask that you provide your name, address, and the case number, which in this matter is 2021-00029. If there's nothing else, Mr. Dutton, would you like to call your first witness, please?
Yes, thank you. Our first witness will be Eric Mayorka.
Okay, Mr. Mayorka, please turn on your audio and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Okay. Please state your name and address for the record.
Eric Miarka, 2 Chestnut Mountain Lane, Asheville, North Carolina, 28803.
Okay. Mr. Dutton, you may ask. My one request is that when introducing Mr. Mayorka, that you ask him what documents he has in front of him prior to submitting him for cross-examination.
I'm sorry, could you I'm sorry, Your Honor. You wanted me to ask him what documents he has in front of him?
That's correct.
Okay.
So under the auspices of, if you're going to the witness stand, you usually don't take things to the witness stand, do you? Or if you do, you identify what documents you have.
Understood. Okay. If I can, I'll introduce the witness and then I'll ask him what he has as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayorka, who do you work for?
Savion, LLC.
And what is your role with Savion?
I am a director of development.
Okay. And how long have you been in that position?
I've been with Savion as a developer for the last 15 months.
And what was your role in this project?
I'm the lead developer on the Martin County Solar Project, so as the lead developer, I work with internal and external subject matter experts to help us get the project from basically just a site to a project that's ready to construct and transact on.
And is there anything in the record that you would like to correct or clarify?
No, there's not.
Can you tell us what documents you have in front of you at this time?
I have the FAR, our response to the first RFI, and our response to the second RFI.
Okay, thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about Savion's experience with developing solar projects?
Certainly. Savion is a utility-scale solar development company. We specialize mainly on transmission-level solar projects, so you'd think the larger solar projects over 50 megawatts. Most of our projects are in the 100 megawatt range. We are based in Kansas City, Missouri. We have a staff of over 120 solar development professionals, engineers, transmission engineers, real estate professionals, GIS, everything that we need to ensure projects are successful throughout the development process. We are currently developing 131 projects across 27 states, and that is about a little over 15 gigawatts of solar and battery storage capacity.
Can you give us a brief overview of this particular project?
Martin County Solar Project is a unique solar development project. This is actually a 200 megawatt solar and battery storage project that's located on a reclaimed coal mine in Martin County, Kentucky. The project is unique in that we are utilizing the reclaimed surface coal mine. We have several others in the region, but this is certainly one of the most advanced coal to solar projects that we are aware of. The project is mid-stage development. We anticipate being under construction early to mid next year.
And what aspects of this project make it challenging from a development perspective?
Well, the reclaimed coal mine presents a number of challenges. You have the engineering challenges. The subsurface conditions are challenging. There's a lot of different size aggregates once you start digging into the surface, and that can dictate the type of technology or installation methods that we're able to use. The real estate is also challenging. There's a number of challenges that come with these old reclaimed mines. The title history, the chain of title is a little bit convoluted. There's outstanding mining permits and bonds on the property. All of these present a number of challenges that we have to overcome.
And can you give us a brief summary of the economic impact expected on the local community from this project?
Certainly. There's the most direct economic benefit, of course, comes from our pilot agreement, the payment in lieu of taxes. We agreed with the Martin County Fiscal Court and the Board of Education to pay $1,500 per megawatt to the county directly and to the Board of Education. That will be paid for the life of the project. And then in addition to that, those direct payments, there is the direct and indirect economic benefits that come from the construction effort. A project of this size would require about an 18-month construction window and have about 300 to 350 construction workers on site throughout that 18-month duration. We are working to train a workforce that will be able to get these jobs once they become available locally in Martin County. But for those folks that do have to come in from outside of Martin County to work on the project, of course, that's going to lead to a number of indirect economic benefits when they stay in hotels, patronize local restaurants and businesses for the duration of that construction.
Thank you for that. Your Honor, I'm prepared to tender this witness for additional questions. I did want to clarify something that I misspoke about in the beginning. I identified Jason Crumpler as our additional witness. It's actually Jason Funk. Apologies. We've got a couple of Joshes and Jasons, and I simply misspoke.
It's no problem.
I wanted to clarify that in case Mr. Majorca tries to pass off one of the questions. And with that, I'll tender him for further examination.
All right, thank you. Ms. Fell, do you have any questions?
Yes.
Please
Good
proceed.
morning, Mr. Majorca. If I'm mispronouncing that, my apologies. At any time, if you cannot hear me well or don't understand my question, please just let me know. And also, as already has been mentioned by counsel, there's likely, I have a feeling you will be very knowledgeable on most of the questions I have for you, but if there's a question you would like to defer to one of the other witnesses, please just let me know. I won't waste your time going into any further detail on that one and identify which witness that question should be deferred to. So first off, part of this project is considered a hunting access area and is maintained by the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife. Are you aware whether Martin County Solar has had any conversations with Fish and Wildlife regarding removal of the property from that hunting access area?
Yes, ma'am, I am aware, and we have started that conversation with the appropriate folks at Fish and Wildlife, specifically Joe McDermott at Fish and Wildlife. We've reached out to him. He's already given us the necessary steps that we need to follow in order to remove the property from that hunting program, and that will be done prior to the start of construction.
Okay. Can you explain for us what that necessary step is to get that property de-enrolled from that area?
Fish and Wildlife needs a shapefile or a KMZ of the project boundary, the land that's going to be used for the project, as well as a letter from the landowners stating that they would like to have the land removed, or that portion of the land removed from the hunting program.
Okay. And where are you in the process of achieving those two separate things you need?
Early in the process, we have not submitted anything to Fish and Wildlife yet.
Okay. Have you spoken with I believe there are two property owners who own land. Have you spoken with them about providing those statements?
Yes, we have, and they are going to be providing those whenever the time is right, closer to construction.
Okay. So they are in favor of it. There's been no opposition from those two landowners. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Does Martin County Solar anticipate any possible changes to the site layout based on the status of these properties?
No, we do not anticipate any changes at this time.
Okay. And are there any plans or any requirements from Fish and Wildlife regarding informing the public about new boundaries of the hunting access area?
They have not indicated any such requirements so far.
Despite not being aware of any requirements, are there any plans from Martin County Solar to inform the public of that change?
I do believe in one of the RFIs, I don't have it in front of me, but we did say that we were going to post signage on the signs, on the fencing around the perimeter of the project, notifying hunters in the area that the land was no longer enrolled in that project.
And you stated you're not aware of any requirements. Have you inquired with Fish and Wildlife if there are any requirements regarding public notice?
We have not specifically asked about public notice requirements. We have just asked about the process in order to remove the land from the program.
I may include that as what we call a post-hearing data request. Will be like our request for information, just whether or not you can get in contact with them to see if there are any requirements, and if so, what Martin County Solar's plan will be to provide public notice, regardless of whether there are requirements. As has already been mentioned, when you started talking about the challenges of putting a solar project on a reclaimed mine site, one of those was about outstanding permits. And in response to staff's first request for information, there was information regarding there were still several outstanding permits for final release. Have any of those been completed?
No, they have not. We are still working through that process.
Okay. Do you know when they are expected to be completed?
Our goal is to have them done by the end of 2021.
And in that response, it indicated that they would all be complete once the current permit revision was completed. Is that all that is pending on those?
Yes, ma'am. Our understanding is that in order to release those permits and achieve a final bond release, it requires a permit amendment. And there's a number of items that go into that permit amendment that we are still gathering, including post-mining land use letters from the surface owners. But yes, our understanding is that once we submit the permit amendment package to change that post-mining land use, that should be all that's necessary to close those permits out.
Thank you. In response to the siting board's consultant report, Martin County Solar had stated they would provide an updated property value report. Council after that filed notice of errata stating that the filing in response to the consultant's report contained a letter from Kirkland, another consultant, in response to that. Do you know, are you aware, I just want to clarify whether that letter is meant to be a supplement to Kirkland's report. It's just a little unclear as to whether any actual additional calculations were performed as to the property value impact. It's basically just stated, let me find the letter. At the very end of the letter, it states that a minor shift of the panels would not have any significant impact on a home. And it's talking about there was some change in the project, and the project was enlarged at one point. I'm just wondering if any actual further calculations were ever done by Kirkland before this letter was presented.
None that were provided to us. That is something I can follow up with Kirkland and reply back to the board after this hearing. But it was Kirkland's understanding that based on the design changes from the original study that was conducted, they were not substantial enough to impact the study or the report that they originally provided. I'm not sure if there was any sort of additional calculations that Kirkland ran to come to that conclusion.
Okay. That will be our second post-hearing data request. If you could get, if there were any further calculations or any report on their side that has not been filed into the record, we would certainly want that. Martin County Solar indicated it intended to complete an American Land Title Association or ALTA survey to locate all pipelines on the site and to get a meets and bounds description of the site. Are you aware whether that survey has been completed?
The field work for that survey is still in process, and we anticipate the first draft of the survey being available to us later in October.
And does Martin County Solar anticipate any change to its application based on the location of the pipelines or the legal description of the property?
No, we do not.
In responses to requests for information, it was mentioned encroachment agreements would be necessary with the owner of the wells and the pipelines that have been identified within the project area. Have any of those agreements been reached to date?
No, they have not, but they will be reached prior to the start of construction.
Martin County Solar has indicated there were questions regarding the subsurface conditions of the soil due to its status as a reclaimed mining site. And based on that, Martin County was considering the best method for installation of the piles, the pre-drilling with posts placed with concrete versus the ground screw methods. Has Martin County Solar determined which method it will be using?
Not at this time. We anticipate being able to make that decision, making a final decision by the end of this year.
Depending on which method is chosen, do you know if there would be any significant difference between the noise produced between those two methods?
I think they would be comparable, but that's not something that I can speak to. Perhaps we could maybe hand it over to Amber. I think, Amber, you did a noise analysis. Probably, I'm assuming that was based off the pile driving operation, not off a screw system.
Okay, I will ask Ms. Coleman when she's called. Thank you. Another question about the soil conditions. It's been indicated that there are elevated levels of arsenic and that a soil management plan would be drafted to address that concern. Has that plan been drafted?
It has not been drafted at this time.
Do you know when to expect that plan being completed?
It would be done as part of our pre-construction effort, so it will be closer to the start of construction, likely Q1 of next year.
And do you know whether or not, based upon the results of that management plan, whether it will alter the proposed construction methods or the time frame of the construction?
I cannot say with certainty at this point, but I'm not sure at this point, unfortunately.
Is there any other witness today that might be able to speak to that?
Maybe Amber. I'm not sure. I don't want to. I might have to follow up with you in a post-hearing data request on that one.
Okay. Okay, I'll make that post hearing data request number 3. It will just ask when you anticipate completing that management plan and whether or not you believe it will have any effect on the proposed construction methods or timeline. Similarly, do you know if Martin County Solar has decided whether to utilize the single axis or fixed tilt racks?
That decision isn't final yet. Both options are being vetted currently. We are leaning towards the single axis tracker, but that decision will be finalized by the end of the year as well.
As far as vegetative screening, it's my understanding there is existing vegetative buffering around the proposed project site. And Martin County has stated that it would be happy to discuss concerns and any potential mitigation measures with project neighbors, and that they would offer vegetative screening to any concerned neighbors where it was feasible and not in conflict with construction and operational requirements. Has Martin County Solar to date spoken to any of the project neighbors regarding any vegetative screening?
No, not regarding vegetative screening.
Okay. Has it received any communication from any neighbors regarding this?
No, we have not.
Martin County Solar also indicated in its response to the consultant's report that it would retain existing vegetation to the extent feasible and without conflicting with construction and operational requirements. I just wanted to clarify whether Martin County Solar would replace or replant vegetation if any of that existing vegetation is damaged or removed during the construction process.
We do not intend to replant any sort of vegetation that might be damaged during the construction process. The only vegetation that should be damaged during the construction process is vegetation within the project boundary where we're actually building the array. And there would not be any need to replant that existing vegetation. The site will be grassed, planted with a native grass seed mix once it's constructed, but no, other vegetation is not going to be replanted within the project boundary.
And as we've already spoken just briefly about, the project was expanded after the original Kirkland report was prepared and filed with the application. Can you confirm the project is still expected to use 2,541 acres of the total 4,100 something footprint?
That is correct. Our current project boundary, as it's been depicted, is still the project boundary that we intend to use. Not all of that project boundary, not all of that 2,000 acres will be disturbed acreage. If we're actually looking at the solar array that's going to be under glass, as we call it, it'll be a smaller number than that 2,000 acres.
Do you happen to know how many acres will be covered with the solar panels?
I don't have that exact number available.
Do you know if that is currently even known?
It is. I don't want to give too rough of a number, but it would be a little over half of what's currently included in that total project boundary.
Okay. That'll be post-hearing data request number 4, is just provide us with the amount of acreage that will be covered with the solar equipment, including the panels. And based on the expansion of the project, are you aware if there are still any consistencies in the record? Earlier there was some inconsistencies regarding the site assessment report versus some information that was provided in Martin County Solar's responses to requests for information. So really what I want to know is, can you confirm that the distances that were provided from the closest sound receptors to the solar equipment of the project, do those still remain the same as what was provided in the responses to requests for information?
Yes, ma'am, they are still the same.
Okay, thank you. As far as economic impact and jobs, Martin County Solar has indicated that 11 jobs would be created during the operational phase of the project, and that individuals in these jobs would be employed by Martin County Solar and outside contracts, with 4 to 6 positions likely to be directly filled. Are you aware of how many of these jobs are anticipated going to Martin County residents?
I'd like to defer that, any economic impact questions to one of our witnesses, please, Dr. Loomis.
Okay. And Mr. Loomis may also be the correct one to speak to this, but you may also be able to, if you can, describe the jobs in detail.
Well, I think the direct jobs are going to be operations and maintenance type jobs. So those are folks that are responsible for the day-to-day operations of the facility, making sure that the panels are operating. If there's anything that is broken, they would, if it's easy enough to fix, they can fix it. If there's a tree that falls over on the fence, they're responsible for removing it, making sure there's no breaches or nothing's dug under the fence. Just a standard operations and maintenance type job.
Are you aware if those jobs have been, like, job titles have been created or anything like that at this point in time?
They have not been created at this point in time.
As far as construction hours for the project, Martin County Solar has responded that it is aware of the siting board's recent decisions holding construction hours from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Saturday. And Martin County Solar has requested permission to construct the project between the hours of 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Could you explain for the siting board why Martin County Solar believes that the additional 2 hours per day is allowed in regards to the visual and the sound barriers?
Well, given the unique nature of this project and its former surface coal mine use, we think that 8 to 8 is reasonable. There is no immediate project abutters. The site is also approximately 400 feet above any of the residential neighbors. So the combination of the horizontal distance as well as the vertical separation between the project site and the nearby residences that are located down in the valley, we really think that this is going to have very little impact from negligible, no impact from a visual perspective, and very little impact on the noise impacts to the surrounding residential neighbors. And additionally, when we think about what the previous project use was, a surface coal mine, that was a 24-hour operation. So I think the way that we have proposed it is that we would avoid the most noise-intensive construction activities, the pile driving. We would do that during the middle of the day, but we didn't want to limit ourselves on doing any sort of construction, be it some sort of civil work, BMP work, during those later evening hours.
Thank you. And it's mentioned several times in responses from Martin County Solar, kind of comparing the previous operations of this site as opposed to the proposed construction. Were there any studies ever performed regarding what noise levels would have existed at the prior operation versus what is proposed from Martin County Solar?
Are you referring to the former coal mine, the surface coal mine operation?
Yes.
We did not study any noise impacts from the coal mine operation.
And lastly, has Martin County Solar created or entered into any decommissioning plan for the project?
We have not.
Okay. Does Martin County Solar have plans to create such a plan?
No, we do not at this time.
Okay. So I'm assuming then there's probably been no discussions with the county regarding any type of bonding for decommissioning.
There are decommissioning and bonding requirements in our land agreements with the surface landowners. There has not been any such requirement with Martin County.
And have all of the land agreements been filed into the case record?
I believe they have, but I'll defer that to Greg if I can.
I can't recall off the top of my head.
I believe we did, and I believe we also asked that they be kept confidential just due to the business terms in those agreements.
Okay. Just a reminder, if there have been any additional agreements, land agreements reached at any time that have not been filed, just please supplement those. Other than that, I have no further questions for you, Mr. Miarka.
Thank you.
Deputy Secretary Lyons?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Eric. I do have some follow-up questions to what Ms. Fell brought up in a couple of instances. Regarding the mine permits that are still active there, and with the revisions, I think you said y'all planned on submitting those revisions by the end of the year. Who will be doing the public notice for those? Post-mining land use changes require public notice.
Yes, sir. And we are working with a consultant, Associated Engineers, David Lamb, who is helping us navigate this mine permit amendment process. I am not sure, to answer your question, who is required to do the public notice. We are aware that there are public notice requirements for the bond release and for the change in the post-mining land use. I'm not sure if that's the permittee that's required to issue this public notice, or if we can do it on behalf of the permittee. But we will make sure that all the public notice requirements are upheld.
I can tell you, it's the permit holder that's responsible. I just wondered if you all were going to do it or whether you were going to leave it to them. So that's good. Thank you.
Hey, Deputy Secretary, can I ask you to speak maybe a little closer to the microphone, wherever it may be?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Our court reporter's having some issues hearing you.
Sure. I'm turning away from my computer is probably what the issue is. Also on the oil and gas wells, from the response to the first RFI, I noticed there was an aerial photo in there that depicted, I don't know how accurate it is, but probably 40 wells within the project area with associated production lines, which the legend indicates they're all underground. Is that correct, or are there any above ground lines, which is kind of typical with oil and gas fields at times?
There are some that you can view. They are above ground. I'm not sure if they are supposed to be underground, but there are certainly some that are visible on site on the surface.
And those do transect the areas where the solar array would be built? Is that correct?
Yes, sir. We would be avoiding those. There would be an appropriate setback from those gas lines, and that would be part of the agreement that we reach with the operators.
Okay. Is there a plan in place in case one of those lines was struck and severed, like a response plan of some type? Because this is very unique, obviously, in all the projects we have filed. I don't think we have anything like this.
At this time, there is not such a plan. That is something that we would be putting together as part of the pre-construction effort once we have a final design package.
I think that would be advisable considering what you're dealing with there. Also, regarding mineral rights, who retains the mineral rights within the project boundary?
There's two mineral estate holders, one for the solid and one for the oil and gas. The solid mineral estate is owned by Pocahontas and Company. The other is the oil and gas is owned by Pardee.
Is there any concern that the retention of those mineral rights by those parties could somehow impact the future of the project, i.e. they may want to come in and drill more wells, for instance? How
Yes,
do you?
sir. Yeah, that is a concern, and that is one of the big challenges of working on these reclaimed mines, is that there's several mineral estates that we need to address. So we've been working with those estate owners to secure limited surface waivers from Pardee and from Pocahontas. Additionally, we are going to be incorporating somewhere within our project boundary, this is yet to be determined, a future pad location for oil and gas exploration, and that is going to be up to the Pardee, the oil and gas owner, where those pads are located. It'll basically just be a set aside. We are not going to be building in those pad locations.
Yeah, I think that would be good information for the siting board to have to see how that's going to be addressed. This is not the first time I've dealt with this particular issue and the uncertainty of several mineral rights and the future of whatever it might have been that we were looking at. One other thing, I noticed when Ms. Fell asked a particular question about vegetation retention or replanting, you said there would be vegetation disturbed. In some cases, is that mature trees, or are we talking low shrubs, or being unfamiliar with the site, I'm not really sure what kind of disturbance we're talking about there.
It's a minimal disturbance. If there are impacts to mature hardwoods, it's minimal. Most of the areas that we're building in are open fields, or it's been covered up with autumn olives. So the majority of the impacts are going to be to the invasive autumn olive shrubs.
Okay. And maybe I just missed it in the filings in the commission record. I only noticed the mention of an assessment of threatened endangered species in Dr. Loomis's report. Have you all done that, or will you be doing that?
Yes, sir. We have done the whole suite of environmental field surveys, including threatened and endangered species surveys and species-specific surveys for bat hibernacula. We are coordinating with state and federal agencies on those reports and awaiting final concurrence from those agencies.
Okay, so that has not been submitted yet.
It has been submitted. Amber might be able to give us we're working with Stantec. They're our environmental and permitting consultant. They can likely give us a better update. I do know that we did receive a response back on our bat surveys from Fish and Wildlife Service. They approved the results of our bat surveys. And I believe we've gotten the concurrence back from Fish and Wildlife Service on the general T&E survey as well. It has certainly been submitted. I'm just unsure of the status of the response from Fish and Wildlife.
But has it been submitted to the commission?
Our threatened and endangered species survey?
Yes.
I don't think we did submit that as part of this process.
Oh, okay. So I didn't miss it then.
I don't think so.
Yeah, that would be nice to see once that's completed. Mr. Chairman, that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rowland, do you have any questions?
I do not have any questions, Your Honor.
Vice Chair Cubbage?
Yes, I have a few questions. Good morning, Mr. Miarca. First off, on the issue of the Fish and Wildlife hunting areas, This is more about the hunting areas that are now going to abut the project. I know there will be fencing and signs once you get to the project, but obviously hunters may not even get to that point. And we know hunting accidents happen. Has the project given any thought to worker safety concerns during construction related to abutting the hunting area?
Yes, ma'am, that's a good question. We have given it some thought. We do not have an official plan in place, but site access to that mine, to get on top of that mine, is really limited to two points of ingress and egress, which we are going to be using for our project. So we will be putting up signage at both of those points of access, notifying, number one, folks of the construction activity up on the site, then certainly notifying potential hunters that are coming up on top of the mine of the project that's ongoing.
Okay. With Ms. Fell, you discussed whether or not neighbors had requested screening and whether that had been discussed. And again, some of this is probably due to my ignorance of the site and where residential may be situated in connection, but you had said there really hadn't been discussions. Has the company taken any proactive measures to discuss that with neighbors and get their sign off that they don't request anything? Or is it just we haven't heard anything?
We have done a lot of outreach on this project. I have not gone door to door to speak with some of the neighbors around this project site. But it really is a unique site when I say that there is no way that any of the neighbors that are identified as part of this process could see that project. I mean, it is all of the nearby residences are located down the valley next to Wolf Creek or off Pigeon Roost Road. They are approximately 400 feet down a mountain slope that's covered with mature hardwoods below the project, as well as several hundred feet horizontally away. So there's just no way that you could see anything that's up on top of the mine site, up on top of the mountain where we're going to be building the project. And likewise, when you're up on top of the mine, you can't see any of the homes down in the valley. Even if you get up to the very edge of the mine, you're just looking into, several hundred feet of mature hardwood forest. You can't see any of the residences down there. The only thing you can see from the top of the mine is other surface mines.
Okay, and am I right? This sounds like it's like an old mountaintop removal site.
That's exactly right, yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's helpful. With regard to, I know you were discussing with Deputy Secretary Lyons, the mine permit amendments, and you had stated you had a consultant that was handling that. Is the issue of surface disturbance also being dealt with by that consultant, and any coordination that needs to happen with the Department of Natural Resources?
When you talk about surface disturbance, are you talking about like a permit for construction activities?
Well, that or any requirements from Department of Natural Resources regarding, there was a mention that there was elevated arsenic at the site, whether or not there are any restrictions on the site that you have to be cognizant of. I'm assuming that you all have discussed this and have, plans in place both for worker safety as well as not violating any covenants that are on the site.
Certainly, yes, ma'am. And most of those plans will be done as part of our pre-construction process. Whoever our engineering firm is that's responsible for putting together or issued for permit plan sets or construction designs, they are also going to be the ones that are coordinating with the necessary state agencies to secure our construction general permit, NPDES coverage, and a lot of that will be dictated by the state at that point.
Okay. I'm going to a slightly different issue, and I apologize if Ms. Fell asked this and I missed it. Is it still correct that you don't have a contract to sell this power yet?
We are still in the negotiations phase of our offtake agreement, and that is still confidential, unfortunately. We do anticipate that being finalized and being made publicly available in the next 2 months.
Okay. And you all, and I believe I saw in the file that you all are already in the PJM interconnection queue?
That is correct, yes, ma'am.
Okay, and I know that queue's backed up. You haven't received approval yet, I'm assuming.
No, but it is an earlier stage interconnection. So luckily, this project predated a lot of the queue congestion that you're seeing currently. So we are in what's called the facility study phase of the interconnection process, the third and final stage of study. And the interconnection agreement is expected later this year.
Okay. My last question involves the Jude and Fletcher Cemetery that I know is not within the project boundary, but it, according to one of the data requests, is 218 feet from the site boundary. Has the project given any thought about coordinating with the operator of the cemetery regarding mitigating construction noise impacts during any funerals that would be happening during construction?
No, ma'am, and that cemetery, I don't think it's active anymore. That's an old family cemetery. In fact, last time when we were doing the site visit with staff, we tried to find it, and the road got so bad that we had to turn around and go back. But we are going to be coordinating with the appropriate SHPO office, State Historic Preservation Office, and we'll be deferring to whatever they suggest, whatever mitigation measures we take regarding those cemeteries. That cemetery is outside of our project boundary. It's actually accessible from the Peter Cave Road down in the valley. So if necessary, we certainly will, and we are open to coordinating with the operator of that cemetery. But it is an old, I'd say, lightly visited family plot, and I don't think I'm not so sure that there's anyone that's being buried there anymore.
Okay, that's helpful. But you have been, given the age of it, you have been in contact with the SHPO about any archaeological concerns?
Yes, ma'am. We have submitted a preliminary archaeological and cultural resources report to SHPO, and we are seeking their concurrence on the project.
Okay, well, and similar to the endangered and threatened species analysis that you've done, if you all could submit that as well, that would be great.
Certainly.
That is all the questions I've got. Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Miarka, I have a couple questions. The distinction and I guess decision regarding whether or not to use tamping, screw-like posts, or some post installation using concrete. What's the calculus there? I've read the data request and the discussions, but it's not necessarily clear what issues are trying to be addressed by a difference, between the three different methodologies. And certainly, it's not clear to me, if the decision is being made after the statutory deadline in this case, it's not necessarily helpful to know what the alternatives are, except for, I guess being aware and I guess presuming the worst. So could you talk me through why you would use the screw or the concrete method instead of tamping?
Yes, sir. At this point, it's really just a matter of economics. In most cases, a solar developer or a solar construction company would prefer to use just the typical pile driving method, because that is the cheapest. And at the end of the day, it really comes down to our cost of electricity and how much we can generate a kilowatt hour of electricity for. So with the price of steel currently and the market conditions that we're experiencing, we are having to reevaluate some of our engineering practices. We do know that the pre-drilling, placing the pile, backfilling with lean concrete works at this site. But we are further vetting out that screw system to see if it is going to be a more economical system for installation than the typical pile driving operation. We cannot simply just drive piles like you would in an agricultural field somewhere because of the aggregate that we have on this site. So that's forcing us to go this pre-drill, place it, backfill with concrete, and that of course increases cost. So at this point, it's just an economics decision. We're vetting them both out to see what the costs are going to be, the increased cost of the pre-drilling and backfilling versus a ground screw system.
So are you saying that the ordinary pile driving will not work, that you won't be going that direction?
Ordinary pile driving will not work because of the size of the aggregate it would likely lead to too much deflection of the piles. There's some pretty large boulders just a few feet below the surface, and if one of those piles hits a boulder, it's going to deflect and come off at an angle, and that's not going to work for the installation.
Okay. I want to ask about batteries. There are certain areas of the application that sort of will speak to the possibility or potential of batteries, and I just want to understand, are you all actually proposing to construct batteries at this facility, or are you leaving that, merely mentioning them as an option so that they're covered in the studies you conducted?
We do have an interconnection position for a standalone battery storage project that we are incorporating into the design. We do not anticipate building that battery storage project at this point, but we do want it to be included in this process because it is something that we would like to possibly add to the project later.
All right, so let me take a step back because that's a lot. In this certificate of construction, are you proposing it to be a 200 megawatt solar facility and associated battery?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and how large is the battery?
It is a 100 megawatt 6-hour battery.
Okay, 100 megawatt, 6-hour duration. Now, would you be would the anticipation be that it's charged? Well, I withdraw that. I don't know that you would know at this point. I want to be, the noise assessment on page 6 discusses the batteries, the noise from batteries in the context of inverters, or I think transformers, in the same, effectively the same narrative. And it says that the distance from batteries and the substation is expected to be at least 4,000 feet from the nearest home. Is that still the case?
I'm sorry, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, can you tell us where you're reading? You said page 6, but I'm not sure which document you're looking at.
Yeah, page 6 of the noise assessment,
Okay.
and there's a
All right.
paragraph.
Do you have that in front of you?
I do not.
There's a
Okay.
paragraph in the noise assessment that's titled Transformers, or Transformer. I think it's not the movie.
Mr. Chair, you asked me if that figure is correct.
Yeah, so let's just say on page 5 of the what do I have here? Of I think the application, the site assessment report on page 5, for instance, mentions paragraph 6, the project will require one substation that will include a 140 megavolt amp transformer and all necessary equipment to step up incoming MV electricity to the high voltage electricity necessary to interconnect into the existing 138 kV INES substation on site, owned and operated by Kentucky Power Company and AEP Company. The GenTie will be no more than 300 feet in length, will be located entirely within the project footprint, and will be constructed by the applicant. Kentucky Power will be responsible for any, well, that's on page 3. I started too early. I'm sorry. It's paragraph 14, and it's at the bottom of page 5, and it just is discussing the noise assessment report, but it notes, since the nearest receptor is approximately 4,000 feet from the substation / battery storage sites, noise emitted from the receptor would be less than typical background noise. And I just wanted to make sure I was clear because at least the maps that were proposed only indicate the battery site as being potential. And what I want to know is, since you're asking for the certificate for the battery as well, are you saying that the proposed battery site is the place that's referred to as potential on the maps and being effectively co-located with the substation?
Yes, sir, you're correct. The plan for the battery storage is to have it next to the INES substation and the project substation. I do see the 4,000-foot figure here that you're referring to on page 5, and I don't think that's correct. I'll defer to Amber to see if there's another explanation for it, but that could just be a mistake, quite frankly.
Well, so we've had this before, I'll just say in another case, where somebody provides a noise study and tells us how quiet the entire project will be, and we say, okay, well then you can't put anything closer to noise receptors than indicated in the noise study. And then they come back and say, well, actually, we're proposing to put this about, 1/3 of the distance that the noise study indicated. So I don't know how useful a noise study is if the distance to the noise receptors is not necessarily reflective of what the proposal would be. So I'll ask Ms. Coleman, is that who you're deferring to?
Yes, sir.
All right, I'll ask Ms. Coleman about the question, but if we don't get an answer, then I'll ask Ms. Fell to seek clarification on that and the post-hearing data request. And with that being said, I think we may want to follow up anyways and just find out whether the distances, if there have been any changes to the distances as indicated in the noise assessment versus what's actually planned or proposed. Those are all the questions I have. Mr. Dutton, do you have any redirect to Mr. Miarca?
I do. Just one question. Mr. Marca, so the batteries would be located right next to the INES substation, is that correct?
That's correct.
So for the folks that have not been out to see the site, can you describe the INES substation a little bit? Because it's not a normal substation. It's a pretty substantial structure.
Yes, it is. It is a 138 kV substation. It's very big. It's large. In fact, it can handle over 400 megawatts of injection capacity at this point, is our understanding. And there was plans at one point, I think, to upgrade that to an even higher voltage substation from AEP. So it is a significant substation. It's also located on top of the mine, so it's not located down in the valley near some of the nearby residences or neighborhoods. It's up on top of the mine. It will be directly adjacent to our solar facility.
I think that's the only redirect that I have. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. It may be beneficial at this point to take let's say a short break, Mr. Dutton. How about a break until 10:20?
Okay.
Okay. All right, we'll take
Thank
a short recess until 10:20. Yeah. There we go. All right, can you all hear us? Great. All right, we're back on the record in case number 2021-00029, application for Martin County Solar LLC for a certificate of construction for an electric solar generating facility in Martin County, Kentucky. Are there any other, do you have any additional redirect, Mr. Dutton, for Mr. Marka?
I do, Your Honor. Would now be an acceptable time, or were there
Yeah.
questions from other siting board members?
No, this is great. I was hoping that during the break, maybe you all could have figured that out, and so I didn't dismiss Mr. Marco for that exact reason. So if you have any additional redirect, now's the time.
I do. There were 2 points that I think we wanted to clarify. The first, Mr. Mayarka, going back to talking about the pile driving. So the two methods that are proposed for this particular project are not the methods that would be used for virtually every other type of solar project, certainly not ones that are being built on farm and pasture land. Is that correct?
That's correct. I will say the pre-drill, placing the pile, and then backfilling with concrete is comparable. It's similar to a typical pile driving operation, but it's not the same.
Okay. And are those methods typically as loud as the typical tamping down pile driving method?
They are not as loud as your typical pile driving operation.
Okay. But the sound study that we submitted considers pile driving in the tamping down method. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So the method that is used to build this site, regardless of which method is chosen, will be at a very minimum no louder than, but almost certainly quieter than the information that was submitted in the record. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
Okay, if not, feel free to clarify anything.
That's correct. No, I mean,
Okay.
with either one of those likely scenarios for the installation of the piles will be less noisy than the typical pile driving operation, which we modeled in the noise study.
Okay, thank you for that. As for the substation, our quick review has not produced any results for information that is in the record, but I did want to turn attention to the Martin County Solar Project's responses to the staff's initial requests for information, particularly requests 18, 19, and 20, which deal with sound, noise, and distance. In talking about the batteries, can you tell me essentially what are the parts of the battery that would make noise, and what would they be comparable to?
Inverters, that's the same technology. The inverter, that's going to be the loudest part of the battery system. And it is adjacent to the project substation and the INES substation.
Okay, so looking at response to Setting Board's initial request for information, request number 19, the noise levels that are given there for the 5 nearest sound receptors, would those be comparable to the noise levels experienced from the battery, the BESS system?
It would actually be a little bit less than that. The battery storage system is adjacent to the INES substation and the project substation. And if you look at the sound receptor map that was provided in the second response to the RFI, those distances are approximately 1,600 feet and above. So the proximity, or the distance, I should say, from the inverters associated with the battery storage system will be greater than the distances that are described here in request number 19 on the first response to the first RFI.
Okay, and the diagram and distances that you're referring to, are you referring to response to siting board's request, second request for information, request number 3?
Yes.
Okay. With that, I have no further questions. Thank you for the opportunity, Your Honor.
All right. Do you have anything else for Mr. Marca, Ms. Bell?
No,
Okay.
do not.
All right. You can be excused, Mr. Marca. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Dutton?
Your Honor, could I actually allow him to be recalled in case there are any questions that come up for the other witnesses that are not able to be answered? There was some discussion about jobs and employment that he deferred to Dr. Loomis. There may be one or two that actually need to come back to Mr. Mayarka.
That'll be fine.
Okay, thank you.
I'll excuse him to the extent he won't be recalled by the citing board itself. You're welcome to do so.
Perfect, thank you, sir.
Mr. Dutton, you can call your next witness.
Since we were talking about it, our next witness will be Dr. Loomis.
All right, Dr. Loomis, will you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Okay. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is David Loomis, Loomis. My address is 2705 Colby with a K, Kolby Court. That's Bloomington, Illinois.
Mr. Dutton, you may ask.
Thank you. Dr. Loomis, who do you work for?
I am president of Strategic Economic Research, LLC, and I'm also a professor of economics at Illinois State University.
And how long have you been in those positions?
Let's see, I think this is my 26th year at the university, and not sure when I formed the LLC, but at least 10 years, and did consulting even before forming the company.
And what was your role in this particular project?
I was hired to do an economic impact analysis and report for the project.
Is there anything in the record that you would like to correct or clarify?
No.
And with that, I will attend to the witness for further questioning.
Ms. Fell, do you have any questions?
Yes, just a couple of follow-up questions, Dr. Loomis. Same thing goes, if you can't hear me well or don't understand my question, please just let me know. Firstly, in regards to the prior question to Mr. Miarca regarding economic impact and the jobs that will be created from the project, specifically during the operational phase, it's been stated there would be 11 jobs created for that phase, and do you know how many of those are anticipated to go to Martin County residents?
Yeah, it's too early to say at this stage. The intent would be that all of those jobs would be local jobs, but it will depend on the hiring practices to say whether those jobs go to existing Martin County residents or whether they get hired from elsewhere and then relocate to work at the project site. But the intent is all of those 11 jobs would be, during the life of the project, residents of Martin.
By Mr. Miarca that a pilot agreement had been reached. Are you aware whether or not that has been finalized?
I'm not aware. We did, in our modeling, we assumed that pilot amount, but I'm not aware what stage the agreement's in.
Okay. My apologies for assuming that you would be the witness to know that. Given that, I might just go ahead and put on the record a post-hearing data request, counsel, for Martin County Solar to provide any copy if there is a finalized pilot agreement at this time.
Okay. Anything else, Ms. Fell?
No further questions.
Deputy Secretary Lyons, any questions?
No, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Rowland?
Just a couple of questions. In your report for the annual operations, the on-site labor impacts, you estimate around 544,000. Is that for the 11 continuous job after project completion? So is it okay to assume for an approximate annual salary of around $50,000 for those jobs?
Do you know what page number you're looking at in terms of the report?
This is table 3, page 21.
And could you repeat the question again in terms of the numbers?
The on-site labor impacts, the 544,000 that you have listed, does that reflect the expected payroll for those 11 jobs?
That's correct.
Okay, so it'd be around just under $50,000 a year.
That's correct.
Okay, and then how do you calculate for the state the 1,086,000?
Yeah, so there are two separate models that we run. So when I'm looking at wages and salaries, I'm looking at specific Martin County numbers, and then for the state, we're looking at the state as a whole for those numbers. And I believe, based on our county economics, that the average wages for the county are below what the state average wages are.
Okay. Those are the only questions I have. Thank you.
Vice Chair Kovich, do you have any questions?
No questions for this witness, thank you.
Mr. Dutton, do you have any redirect to Mr. Loomis, Dr. Loomis?
I do not.
All right, thank you very much for being with us, Mr. Loomis. You may be excused.
Thank you.
Mr. Dutton, do you have any additional witnesses?
We do, Your Honor. Our next witness is Amber Coleman.
Okay, Ms. Coleman, please raise your right hand and turn on your audio. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Amber Coleman, and my address is 106 South Bar Way in Cary, North Carolina, 27518.
Mr. Dutton, you may ask.
Ms. Coleman, who do you work for?
I work for Stantec Consulting.
And what is your role with them?
I'm an environmental scientist.
And how long have you been in that position?
I've been at Stantec for 16 years.
And what was your role in this project?
I performed the noise assessment.
Is there anything currently in the record that you would like to correct or clarify?
Since we were talking about it, I went back and looked. The 4,000 feet is a mistake. For the, sorry.
You know what the accurate distance is for that particular passage? And I know I'm putting you on the spot, so if the answer is I don't know, that's okay.
I did look it up while we were on break. The closest battery storage is 1,942 feet.
Can you repeat that number again, please?
1,942.
Okay, is it your understanding as well, and Mr. Mallorca talked about this a little bit, but is it your understanding as well that the inverters would be approximately as loud as the battery storage system?
Yes.
Would there be any sort of, I guess, significant difference between the two that would make the noise level assessed from the inverters and those distances inaccurate?
No.
So I guess let me ask this in a different, slightly more artful way. So particular citing board's initial request for information, number 19, do you have that available in front of you?
I do.
Okay. So the distance we're talking about is 1,942 feet from the nearest sound receptor. Is that what you testify? Is that accurate?
Yes,
Okay. So if the battery storage system is comparable to an inverter, is it safe to say that the noise level from the battery storage system to the nearest receptor would be considerably less than any of the noise levels provided here, given that these noise levels are all from all from inverters that are going to be located considerably closer than 1,942 feet.
that's correct.
Do you have, and if not, again, that's okay. Do you have an estimate for what that noise level would be from 1,942 feet?
I do not. It would be less than 30 decibels, though.
Thank you. With that, I'll tend to the witness for further examination.
Ms. Coleman, can you identify if you have any documents or information in front of you?
I have the noise assessment report and the response to the request for information.
All right, thank you. Ms. Fell, do you have any questions for Ms. Coleman?
Just one quick follow-up, and just if you could confirm whether you know of any other changes that have occurred to the project since the noise assessment you completed that would impact the noise levels that have been provided therein.
I do not.
Thank you.
Deputy Secretary, do you have any questions?
I do not. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Rowland?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chair?
Just one question. I know that Mr. Miarca had stated that the analysis done in the noise report was of the traditional methods for installing the for pile driving, and that the method that was proposed here would be a lower noise level. I mean, do you agree with that assertion?
That's correct.
Did you do any analysis specifically of the methods proposed here?
The analysis included in our noise report is the traditional pile driving, impact pile driving methods, and those are included in the report.
Okay, but my question was, though, have you done any specific analysis, whether in this report or otherwise, of the methods that this project proposes to use?
I have not.
Okay. What's the basis for your assertion that it would be less noise?
Based on the techniques involved, the traditional pile driving is typically an impact. Noises are typically higher than non-impact noises.
Okay. And is that true even if you're drilling through the kind of rock, the large aggregate that's been described at this reclamation?
I do not have an answer for that.
That's all I've got.
Ms. Coleman, you said you have a copy of the noise assessment?
Mhm.
You might have turned to page 9 of that noise assessment. And I think that page 9 has a narrative at the top of it that starts off with additional noise above background noise. Just let me know when you're there.
Yes, I'm there.
Okay, so there's a table 5 below that narrative there that indicates the nearest receptor and the nearest residential receptor to solar panels, inverters, transformers, and operation and maintenance. Do you see that?
I actually have open a version of the report that's got the newer information that we provided in the response with the distance to the 5. You give me 1 second, I can open up that version. I apologize.
Mr. Chairman, could you repeat where you were looking, please?
Yeah, it's the noise assessment at page 9. It's table 5.
I've got it. I've got it now. I have the report up now on that table 5.
Okay, and so we're looking at the same thing, is what you're saying?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So it says here that for the panel tracking system, that the nearest residential receptor is 670 feet. That for the nearest inverter is 1,013 feet. For the nearest transformer, it's 3,740 feet. And then for the operation and maintenance, the proxy, I guess, for that is an automobile, is 563 feet. Is that what you see as well?
Yes.
Okay, so the transformer, 3,740 feet to the nearest residential receptor, is that accurate?
Those are related to the, that 4,000 feet to the substation, that mismeasurement.
Okay, so
There's a,
so
sorry, go ahead.
it's not 3,740 feet to the nearest, from the transformer to the nearest home?
that's correct.
Okay, and so for inverters, is it 1,013 feet from the nearest inverter, from an inverter to the nearest home?
Let me double check our updated information and make sure that is what. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and when you say updated information, is that something that's been filed into the record?
Yes, I'm looking at the response to, the response for information, and the updated information revolves around the substation measurement that was updated, that we've already discussed.
Okay, but which update, which response for information, the first or the second round?
Mr. Dutton, do you know which one is the one that asked for the distances to the 5 closest receptors? Is that?
Yeah, so that's the initial request for information where there was the 5 different receptors, and then the second request for information asks for information about the figure number 2 in Appendix A of the noise assessment, and that's where there were some of the distances with the map done. So I'm not sure if you're looking at a map or a table. If you're looking at a table, you're probably talking about the first one.
Yes, it should be that one.
All right, so a couple questions here.
Mhm.
When it says transformers, and this was, I don't know necessarily clear to me, I guess I should have asked about it earlier. Is it measuring a additive transformer? Is the 1,942 feet from a transformer that's there today, or a transformer that is being proposed to be added?
That is proposed.
Okay, so the response to the second request for information, response to the siting board's second request for information, request number 3, the request is to update the figure number 2 in Appendix A of the noise assessment report in the SAR to include the numbers associated with each noise receptor as reported in Martin County Solar's responses to staff's first requests 18 through 20, which I think you may be referring to, those updates to distances. And the response is, see below, when we reviewed the original figure, we observed that the substation noise levels were calculated using the existing AEP substation, not the project substation. The project substation is slightly further away from the receptors, which reduced the noise levels by 1 dBA from those originally presented. All noise levels are less than 5 dBA and will not contribute any additional noise to the surrounding areas. So the project substation is further away from the receptors, but the AEP substation was initially the one that was calculated with the distances. So I guess I'm confused on why that distinction would then result in the actual receptors being twice as close to the nearest transformer in the updated numbers.
The original report had a mistake in the measurement. So the values provided in the request for information are correct.
Okay. So it wasn't that the wrong substation was measured, it was just the wrong measurement.
Correct.
Okay. So the one, just to be clear, the 1,942 feet is to the AEP substation or the project substation?
The 1,942 feet is to the battery storage area, and the our closest receptor to the new substation is 1,694 feet. 92 feet, I'm sorry.
So is the battery substation clustered around, is the battery area clustered around the AEP substation or the project substation?
On the information that I have, the battery is adjacent to the existing substation, which is further away from the receptors.
But the response that I just read, item 3, says that the project substation is slightly further away from the receptors.
And the this existing substation is very large.
Okay, so is the AEP substation or the project substation closer to the receptors that we're talking about?
The existing substation is closer to the receptors.
Okay, and are we talking about when we say the distance between the AEP substation, the batteries, and the project substation, are all of those distance to the nearest receptors referring to the same receptors?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Coleman. Those are all the questions I have, Mr. Dutton. Do you have any redirect?
Just a couple. Ms. Coleman, do you have the response to Siting Board's second request for information, request number 3 in front of you? It was a map that was put together by your team.
I do have the map.
Okay. So looking at the map, and looking at the legend there, is it accurate to say that sort of the top purple rectangular box is the existing substation?
Yes.
Okay, and the one just below and to the left of it is the proposed project substation?
That's correct.
And then sort of the dotted boxes to the right of the existing substation, that would be the battery storage system locations, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so this map doesn't show it, but are you familiar with where the receptors are located from this position?
Yes.
Is there a good map you can point me to that will demonstrate that? Because I have one, but I don't know that we actually have this in the record. I think it was used during the site visit.
I prepared a map that has the distances to the 5 closest receptors for the inverter, the tracking panels, and the substation. And the
So let me just ask this without referring to a specific map here. This may be the easiest way to do it. So where is, if you can sort of describe it, where is roughly the nearest receptor from the existing substation, the proposed substation, and the battery storage systems?
Okay. The closest receptors are down down in the valley, down the hill, northwest of the existing substation. They're on the other side of the of Kentucky 1439 and the other side of the existing railroad.
Okay,
And, go ahead.
so the dots that you have indicated here is R1 through 5, those are all of
Yes.
the closest receptors for regardless of which sort of substation or structure that we're talking about between the substations and battery storage systems.
That's correct.
So regardless, those would be the closest noise receptors.
Yes.
Okay. I have no further questions after that. Thank you, Your Honor.
Is there any reason Ms. Coleman can't be excused?
No,
All
Your
right,
Honor.
thank you very much, Ms. Coleman. Mr. Dutt, would you like to go ahead and call back Mr. Marka that may be able to narrow some of the questions folks may have?
We have one more witness, so if it's all right, I'd like to call my last witness and then maybe call Mr. Majorca in case our last witness doesn't have any that he's able to answer either.
That'd be fine.
Our last witness, before we recall Mr. Majorca, will be Mr. Jason Funk.
Okay, Mr. Funk, if you could turn on your camera and turn your audio on, and please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury, or, excuse me, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct under penalty of perjury? Oh, I need you to turn on your audio, it's still off.
Sorry about that. Yes,
Okay. Please state your name and address for the record.
my name is Jason C. Funk, and I live at 104 Parsons Lane, Newtown, Pennsylvania.
Okay. Mr. Dutton, you may ask.
Thank you. Who do you work for, Mr. Funk?
I work for Savion Energy.
And what is your role with Savion?
I'm Director of Permitting and Environmental.
How long have you been in that position?
I've been in this position for approximately a year and a half.
And what was your role in this particular project?
My role in this particular project is to oversee all the environmental studies that our consultants have prepared, as well as all the permitting work that needs to be done for the project.
Is there anything in the record that you would like to correct or clarify?
No, there is not.
With that, I will attend to the witness for further examination.
Ms. Fell?
Staff have no questions for Mr. Funk.
Deputy Secretary?
Just one, Mr. Funk. I didn't see any, under the cumulative environmental assessment, I didn't see any real issues related to any water in particular. Are there any ponds or any bodies of water on the site?
There are ponds and streams and wetlands on the site, but we're actually in the process of working through that with both the Army Corps and the state.
Okay, so you're doing a wetland, stream and wetland delineation there. Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all.
Mr. Rowland?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chair?
No questions?
Mr. Dutton, do you have any redirect for Mr. Funk?
I do not.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, Mr. Funk. Mr. Dutton, you would like to recall a witness?
I would, yes. I'd like to recall Mr. Majorca.
All right, Mr. Marco, I just remind you that you're still under oath and affirmation. Mr. Dutton, do you have any direct that you would like to conduct to Mr. Marco before you tender for cross-examination?
No, I believe I'll just tender him for examination at this time.
Ms. Fell, do you have any questions?
Just one, Mr. Miarka. If you could confirm, I've already asked it in a post-hearing data request, but just wondering if you could confirm today whether or not the pilot agreement has been finalized.
Yes, ma'am, it has been finalized. It has been acted on, voted on by the Martin County Fiscal Court. It is in final form.
Okay. And just again, I've asked for a copy of that, so that will be in the post-hearing data request. Are you aware of the terms of that? Can you briefly explain that to us?
I know the highlights. That's set at $1,500 per megawatt of installed capacity. And that is to be split between the Board of Education and the county, Martin County. There will have to be some math that's done each year to determine what the tax liability would have been under a no pilot scenario, and that amount goes to the school board first. They are prioritized in terms of how much of the pilot share goes to the school board. That amount will change each year, obviously, as the tangible personal property depreciates. So the share that the school board gets at the beginning of the project of that pilot payment will be larger, but as that equipment depreciates in value, the lion's share will start to shift towards the county throughout the life of the agreement.
Thank you. No further questions from staff.
Deputy Secretary,
Oh, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Mr. Rowland,
No further questions.
Vice Chair.
I do have one follow-up, if that's okay. Going back, Mr. Miarca, to the cemetery again. I noticed that page 2 of the noise report indicated that the Jude Fletcher Cemetery, or the Fletcher Jude Cemetery, was being treated as currently in use due to some covered shelters being there. And not that this is a little unfair to spring on you, but in just Googling obituaries, I found that there was a burial there literally 2 months ago. So to the extent that this cemetery may be in use, obviously it would be difficult to coordinate with the cemetery, but would the project be willing to, say, give information to the local funeral homes so that someone can contact the project if there is going to be a burial there during construction, so that construction can be delayed during the time of the burial?
Yes, certainly, and thank you for bringing that to my attention. I wasn't aware that they were still using this. I'm a little bit surprised to hear that, but yeah, we will certainly coordinate with the funeral homes. Is a good idea, reaching out to them, letting them know about our plans, and working with them as best we can to accommodate any sort of services that they may have at that cemetery.
Okay, thank you. That's all I've got.
Mr. Dutton, do you have any redirect to Mr. Markham?
I do not.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Markham. All right. So, Mr. Dutton, I think you may be getting some questions probably by the end of the day, either today or tomorrow. I suspect probably before the end of the day tomorrow. How many days, given that I think you know all the questions that you'll be asked, how many days do you expect once you get them in writing that you'll need to respond?
Let's see. Could we have, let's see, well, how much time do we have in this? If we could have approximately a week and a half or so to answer those, I think that would be good, just because I don't know availability of all of the team.
So today, as I understand it, is September the 28th, Tuesday. How about next Friday, October the 8th?
Let's see, would it be possible to have till the following Monday, although I guess that's Columbus Day. I don't know if the sighting board is open on that day.
I know our website is. You're more than welcome to. I don't know that the 11th is a state holiday. It may be. I certainly wasn't planning on being off that day. How about we just make it the 12th?
That'd be great. I appreciate that.
So we'll have those out by the end of the day tomorrow, September the 29th, to be responded to by Tuesday, October the 12th. I would say if you need any additional time, you can certainly file a motion seeking additional time, Mr. Dutton, but as I understand it from looking at the record, that we have to get an order on this case out by November the 15th. We need evidence to close fairly soon so we can start drafting that order.
Certainly, I understand, Mr. Chairman. I believe that the 12th should be plenty of time, but if it's not, I'll identify that very early in the process in preparing these responses.
Okay. I don't know that, well, you don't need our permission to file a post-hearing brief. Certainly, the regulations and statute permit it within a certain number of days, so feel free to avail yourself should you have the inclination to do so. Do you have anything else, Mr. Dutton, on this case?
I don't believe so. We only have the two pending motions. One of them is simply to supplement our motion for deviation, where we identified a neighborhood after submitting our first motion for deviation. Other than that, I believe those are the only outstanding issues.
Okay. Is there anything else, Ms. Fell, from staff?
Nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Being that the case, we'll adjourn the hearing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.